Hi, my name is Chierol and I'm a queer facade engineer.
Hello, my name is Oliver and I'm a trans guy who make videos about LGBTQIA+ people where they get to talk about anything that they want that somehow relates to them being queer. I was recently on a short visit in London to march in the Trans Pride Parade, and while there I also met up with some amazing people, and one of them was Chierol.
Hi, I'm Chierol Lai. I'm born and raised in the Netherlands. My parents are from Hong Kong. I've been living in London for the past 9 years, and I first got here because of university. I identify as queer, lesbian, androgynous, tomboy. My pronouns are she, her. Sometimes I do think about it and question that a bit, but I don't know whether that's just like it comes and goes with the hair kind of thing.
Everyone in the queer community have different relationships to labels, and this is what they feel like for Chierol.
It doesn't define me as who I am necessarily in that kind of sense, but sure, like sometimes just having labels does put my mind at ease in a way where like there's a comfort in it, like that a sense of like belonging. With these labels there's a sense of like, oh, there are other people who also use these labels, and there's a sense of like I'm not alone.
Chierol says that she's getting more and more queer. What does that mean to her?
I think it just means loving myself and being really not embarrassed about loving other people as well. So it could mean, just recently I had a thought about like PDA, and I just remembered how like when I was younger, PDA was so like scary because it's like, you know, it's actually like, what if I got attacked? What if everyone's like looking at me and staring? And now it's just like, it just doesn't matter. Like, obviously I'll still very much a little bit take care of myself and like have to be worried a little bit about like danger and like and things, but like if I just love someone, then I should be able to just express it and show it and not worry about who's looking or all kind of things. And yeah, so I think growing into my queerness is just growing into me and being proud of it. For me, queerness at the moment does have a little bit of physical representation, which not that there's like a queer look, but like it's a bit, we do joke about in London about like, you know, you can kind of like tell that person is so queer. And I love being very visibly queer because when I like first came out, which was like, you know, when you're like 16, all that kind of stuff, I was very straight passing, if I can say that. There's this frustration of like, nobody can tell that I'm queer, that no one can tell I'm a lesbian, so it's like no one's like hitting on me kind of thing. So it's like must wear all the rainbow merchandise, which I still do, but now there's less of that issue where like I'm pretty sure everyone can tell kind of thing.
Chierol has chosen to talk about her job in this video, and towards the end we're going to tie that back to the queer community. But let's start with listening to when she started working as a facade engineer.
I think they were looking for a personality that would fit the team, I think is what I always really appreciate, and that people don't emphasize enough, I think, in school. Because like in school they're so about like, you must do all these extracurriculars, you must do all these things, get these achievements, but like people-to-people skills is just equally as important, really. But yeah, so I got into facade engineering, which just means that I work in construction, but I only do the outside of a building, so the facade of the building. So a building tends to have like a performance. So for example, how much heat it retains or loses, that would be called like a thermal performance. So what I would do is like, I would be able to calculate the type of wall buildup that we would need in order to have the building perform to that thermal performance.
She often works closely with the architects.
The fine line between the architect and what I do is like, the architect still very much designs the building and what it looks like. I don't have any part in that. There's still like the architectural intent and design, that they very much do that. If I work with an architect, then they'll basically show me kind of like what they're hoping to do with their building. Sometimes it can be so early on in the stage that they'll be like, it vaguely looks like this is the color, or like kind of we're thinking about this kind of material, but we're not quite sure yet. And I would be able to help with material selection as well. And there's also like different ways of building a building. Even like the architect might be like, we want a brick building, but there's so many ways of building a brick building nowadays. So you can still do like hand-set bricks, but you can also now get what we call brick face precast walls, which is like you have like just like slithers of brick, and you basically like put it in a mold and then you pour concrete on it. So the concrete wall has brick on the face of it, and that kind of turns up on site, and you just kind of like Lego piece it all together. Or you can even have brick slip systems, which is like, again, slithers of brick, which you kind of just fit into these aluminium or stainless steel rails. So there's so many ways of building a building, and we kind of put that together and help them with that. The other thing that we do help with architects is architects don't need to necessarily know like really like fine details of like kind of like x-ray cuts of a building. So I would actually do hand sketches to help with tricky interfaces or like small details. So sometimes I would even draw like a screw within a window frame, or like I would draw a lot of like x-ray cuts of like glass thicknesses, which always sounds really funny and interesting. With all of this information of like the performance of a building, with these sketches, with material selection, we put together a document called the Facade Performance Specification, and that is a kind of like a contract document. So this document then gets like given to subcontractors. In this case would be facade contractors. So then there's lots of these different companies would then read this document, and then they would then think, do we want to build this building? Is this a project for us? And if it is for them, then they will literally apply an interview style, being like, this is why we think we can build this building. And they will submit lots of like things, and we review all those. We will tell the client like which one we think they should go with. But ultimately it's the client's decision. If the subcontractor wins the bid, they get to build the building. And that is literally the beginning stages of my job. So what happens then is the facade contractors, they're the ones responsible for producing the actual building drawings. And they're the ones who are supposed to like coordinate all the different items with the building. So like, like windows to brick. So we would review all of their drawings and also attend a lot of like factory visits, performance testing. Often like buildings, you do need to build like a tiny section, and then we performance test that off-site, which could include impact testing. So we try and like destroy it and see how much forces it can take. And then we go on site as well. We're not always on site as a facade engineer. It's more of kind of like a spot check. I'm more of seeing that they are building things correctly to the drawings.
Chierol's favorite part of the job might not be what you think.
The best bit for me, unfortunately, is when the project goes wrong. Because that's when you learn the most, and that's when you like have the most to do. Otherwise you turn up on site and you just go like, looks good, and then you leave. But when something goes wrong, you go like, oh wow. And then you have this whole meeting and discussion about it, and then you get to problem solve, which is what like engineering is all about, problem solving.
But there is of course also another big thing that she really likes.
I guess the most rewarding part is that, unlike many other jobs, I think, it's like I have a physical product out there. And then it's kind of like, yeah, you can see it from a distance, or like people use it and occupy it, and it's talked about, and yeah, because physical spaces are important.
And today she's invited me to visit one of the buildings that she's worked on.
So one of this project that I've been working on since, you'd say, the beginning till the end. It's on Piccadilly Street, opposite the Ritz, kind of like Green Park area. It's a very busy place, and it's right on the corner. It's a very like, it's a building kind of thing. It was an existing building that they wanted to change the windows and clean up the existing facade, and also add 2 extra floors on top and do a lot of works in the back of the building that you don't see. It's kind of 2 buildings attached to each other, but they are connected on the inside. So basically one building is brick, and the other building, the one that's on the main street, is made of Portland stone. So then the Portland stone building is going to be offices, and the brick building is a hotel. The whole top floors across the whole 2 buildings are also hotel.
And these are some examples of what she's been doing on that project.
We've completely replaced all the windows. For thermal performances, one of the major weaknesses is windows. So, which is why they had to change the windows anyways. They were old, they were knackered, and the glass back then would be, for example, could be just a double glazed unit. So it's 2 pieces of glass, it's 1 unit, 2 pieces of glass. But nowadays, we tend to like laminate pieces, so there might actually be 4 pieces of glass, for example, inside your DGU unit, your double glazed unit. And we put like loads of like fancy coatings on the inside, which you can't see. So when you see glass and it's got that kind of like bluish tint, usually that's because of the performance coating, which basically reflects the sun so that heat doesn't travel inwards, but you also get coatings that do the opposite where they trap heat instead. And also we've been going through a phase of bronze facades in London for a while. Real bronze has its own issues because it weathers, it turns green. And also like even when water hits bronze and that runoff can stain the things underneath it. Especially if you have Portland stone, which is like white, and you have a bronze window frame around it, that tends to stain the stone. So instead we went for just an aluminium window frame and painted that bronze.
The building is important to Chierol for a few different reasons.
It's just really important because of where it is. It's that every time we have marches, pride marches, commercial pride, trans pride, it's the route that we always walk. And I'm just always so proud of it. And every time I walk past it, and when I'm with my friends, I'm always like, look, it's my building. Like every single time we walk past it. This just has a significance to me and I feel quite proud of it.
It also makes her think about the importance of physical spaces for the queer community.
Every time we walk past this building and I see this building and I'm really proud of it, and then start thinking about the meaning of physical spaces and what it means for the community. And I just think about what's the link between physical spaces and being queer. When I first went down this kind of thinking path, I was always thinking like, surely like physical spaces can't be that important. Like a community is just us, like we are all we need. We could sit in a park and just gather and we can do this march and we don't need a physical space, you know? It's that was like, we're just together. Part of that is still true because we are just people and we stand together and we can be anywhere together, and that's what community is. But you just can't deny that a physical space is so important. It is where we gather, and sure we can gather in a park, but like a park has so many issues with it, weather, security, and like, yeah, you can't always be there, and you don't necessarily always feel comfortable to necessarily always be open, and there's other people. So in these physical buildings, it's like there's a sense of safety and security. Well, in the physical space, you can keep your things there, you can decorate it, you can make it your home. You can really change a space to be like, this is a safe space because of the way or the things that we decorate it, or the type of people that gather there. Like this is like a physical point where like this is where we gather and that you can come to and you're welcome and you're part of this. And sadly enough, we keep losing our physical spaces. And I know that we're building or occupying more spaces, and there are amazing things. And I don't know the statistics, but like, are we losing places faster than we are creating? And that's just just a sad thought.
And Chierol hopes that she can be a part of creating these buildings for queer people in the future.
So I guess in a way, it's like when I look at my physical spaces and I put like my queer touch on it, but I wonder like, wouldn't it be great if trying to think about what it could be, and it would just be amazing if it was occupied for the queer agenda. Yeah, that'd be amazing. But yeah, we'll see. We'll get there.
Lastly, Chierol has been thinking about the fact that different queer people contribute to the queer community in different ways.
Sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough for it, because I'm friends with a lot of people who, like, from where I stand, they very actively do things. They're like event posters or leaders or organizers. They are very much like, they're performers. They're always out there in the front of the line or like really speaking up about it. And I just always felt like that I'm just a very happy, good participant. And you know what, and I've been told like, that's great. Like, you need participants and people who care. And if that's the role I play, then I would happily play that.
If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time!